Good, longtime friends from the BGR Group, Johnathan, Mantz, and Loren Monroe join us. A lot of us on this call have known Johnathan and Loren for 10 plus years. They are the Washington representative for the AmChams of Asia Pacific, and I've worked with them closely on all the door knocks I've chaired to DC, and they just do an amazing job of getting us ready for those door knocks, helping us frame those issues, and then getting those key meetings with the members of the executive branch and the House and think tanks. And so just grateful for all that BGR has done with us. And with my new role with the American Association of the Indo-Pacific, which Jackson Cox formed a year or so ago, we're going to be looking to do more in DC and be looking to hopefully do some work with BGR as well. So I continue to look forward to working with them. I guess, Johnathan, we'll hear from you first
Sure.
on where does Trump-Harris stand today from your perspective?
From July 21, when the party coalesced around Kamala Harris, the vice president, to her convention, hundreds of millions of dollars begin to roll in, hundreds of thousands of volunteers begin to come to her defense. And the election and the voting and the support for both sides kind of rebalanced itself. Gravity, in a sense, took over where today, one of our, a friend of both Loren and mine, and Steve, I know you know him well, Harold Ickes had a great term, which he called it, it's tight as a tick, this race. And it really is. We're tight as a tick. Today's polls have where she was, pre-July 21, I think Trump was up +4 and surging. Today, Harris is now +2. And while the trend lines, 2.5, and while the trend lines are positive for Harris in terms of her numbers have begun to inch up, it's still within the margin of error. It's anyone's ball game. But this race is not about national polls. This race is about 7 battleground states. If you look at east to west and north, we'll go north to south and east to west. North to south, it's Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada. Those 7 states will determine the election. Now, interestingly, if you look at those 7 states, each of those polls today, if you take the average polls of the past 2 weeks, put them together, you're within the margin of error. And the margin of error in today's polling is plus or minus 3 points. We're looking at all these states. They're all within maybe 1 point, maybe a half point, at best 2 points. Really not enough to bet your mortgage at who's going to win each of these states. One thing is true, though. If you look at the results in 2016 and in 2020, the winner, Donald Trump in 16, Joe Biden in 2020, won 6 of those 7 battleground states. The winner's it's going to winner take all situation. So something will break in the final 2 weeks where voters will ultimately make up their mind, and a swing I think a swing will occur. And in 2024, like the 2 previous elections, those states, those 7 key battleground states will swing one way or the other. I don't think it'll be a 4-3 or even a 5-2 makeup.
And I'll agree with Jonathan's assessment of the race being very close. I do think the momentum is for Trump right now, and that may be a little surprising. If your assumption is that like January 6th dominates the voters' attention and Trump is not stable and he says crazy mean things, how in the world could he get reelected? This sounds far-fetched, but I will tell you the years that have gone by since Biden Harris were elected, memories have faded a little bit. It's not front page news. It's not as visceral reaction as it was. And other events and other priorities have started to come to the forefront on the voters' minds. And by that, I'm not trying to lessen the seriousness of what happened on January 6th. It's just almost become baked in. And Trump and his reputation and his popularity has remained extraordinarily steady over the years and remains, in the low 40s right now, and on the high day on the upper 40s. And it really comes down to almost a choice right now of who do you dislike less. And by some refer to as double haters. There's different terms that pollsters are using right now, which is, are you more comfortable with Trump because you know what you get, or are you willing to take Harris because it's got to be a little bit better than Trump, and different than Biden, and so it's not necessarily you're voting straight on the issues. A lot of this has to do with where voters' comfort levels are, and there's a ton of anxiety right now in the U.S. And part of that is our uh, the state of play coming out of um, terrible hurricanes that just dumped all over North Carolina, and the federal government's response to it. Some of it is a hangover from COVID and whether people think the government was being honest and whether lockdowns were a good idea or bad idea. And some of it is a resurgence in concern about the level of immigration, illegal immigration that is happening in the U.S. Border security, which hadn't always been a big concern for a broad swath of the electorate, is now really kind of being concerned. And not to say that everybody's being bigoted or everybody's being xenophobic. It's just a economic driven anxiety where top issue is and voters has always been the economy, but it's a cost of living piece of that debate now, where prices remain high, even though inflation has come down. There is a concern about just a general cost of living that they want to blame somebody for, and that generally will go to the party in power, which for that point is obviously Kamala Harris. That is why you see Harris make a very deliberative event to run as if she's a new candidate. Her slogan is a new way forward, and almost try to uh, get voters to forget that she's been in office for the last 3.5 years. That's why the Harris folks get so mad, like yesterday, day before, when President Biden comes out and says, Kamala Harris has been a great partner. She's helped me on every major decision over the last 3 years. He thinks he's giving her a compliment because he wants to believe that he's popular. He's done great things. He's made a difference in the direction of the country. Kamala Harris is sort of in the background, like, no, thank you. No, I don't want to be affiliated with Biden because his poll numbers remain in the basement. And the concern of the right track, wrong track in the US remains way off base, with most voters thinking the country's on the wrong track and that they don't have a high degree in comfort of which way the economy is going, and that will blame the incumbent. So Kamala Harris will constantly talk about a new way forward, about what I will do on day one, what my plans are for addressing the cost of living. And Republicans, Trump can never stay on message, so he doesn't do a very good job. But if you watch the vice presidential debate, you saw a systematic effort by J.D. Vance to talk about, why are you making all these promises? You can do that right now if it's such a good idea. If you want to do border security, do that right now. If you want to do cost of living, do that right now. So a long way of saying the issues are going to be familiar. The economy, cost of living, immigration, border security, and then foreign policy itself is never ranks high in any poll, let alone trade policy. Foreign policy is rarely a differentiator in a presidential campaign, but there is a frustration and a weariness by the U.S. voter taxpayer of continuing to send money to Ukraine in its war against Russia. I think intellectually everyone agrees it's the right thing to do, but they're very tired of spending that amount of money that they think should be going to protecting the border, should be going to helping people in North Carolina rebuild. And that is one piece that also translates to the Middle East, where a year-long series of wars between since the violence a year ago today in Gaza, the images on the TV, the back and forth between Hamas and Israel and Hezbollah and Iran, there's a discomfort with the direction of the country's foreign policy that I think plays to Republicans' advantage. Now, while Harris is doing her very best to navigate tricky politics on that versus the Muslim population or the Jewish population, and it's terrible. And I apologize for putting it into terms of politics and what is a literal life or death issue. But that's where we are in a couple weeks out from the election, where things like disaster recovery, where things like border security and wars are impacting how voters are going to act on election day. With the additional caveat that in many states, many important states, voting has already begun. The U.S. over the years has expanded early voting, mail-in ballot voting, and so it's not just about what happens on election day in November. A lot of these places, North Carolina, Arizona, California, are shipping out their ballots, and people are able to vote early or to vote by mail. So early momentum matters. It's not just how you close, which is dating myself, how I used to conclude whether the election was going well or badly, in late October, early November. Right now is when a lot of people are starting to make up their mind, and that's why you see so much energy on both sides on juicing turnout. And they juice turnout by hitting their core issues. And that's, to Jonathan's point, that's where the deep blue and the hot red issues. I mean, you can't turn on the TV now without a television advertisement. But even more importantly, the Democrats, everybody from Liz Cheney to Bruce Springsteen to Barack Obama trying to get out the vote. Trump is out there with Elon Musk and hitting every core conservative issue he can, and reminding people that he's been shot at twice, or shot at once and almost shot at a second time, because he loves his country so much. I only say all that a little bit flippantly to say the game is on right now, and the next 2-3 weeks in the key states that Johnathan identified will make the difference on the issues that both candidates think will force their voters out to vote.
Loren, that is extraordinarily helpful, because that is, I mean, I speak literally to thousands of people over the last year or so on the election here, and that one of those questions is, how can people still vote for Trump? Don't they see what happened? And I think you gave the answer as to why that is. And so it's really helpful to have someone like you explain and frame that to those of us out here, because that is one of those core questions. So I want to hit in one moment. I'm going to hit stop on the record. But Johnathan, I'd love to get your reaction to Loren's take, how he has framed things. That question. Trump, who I thought, personally had an awful debate against Harris, but in that last 90 seconds, that was the line he used. You talk about the opportunity economy, you talk about all these great things. You had 3.5 years to do it. Why haven't you done it now? Is that a winning message for Trump? And is Harris able to overcome that?
It should be. If Harris, I mean, you don't have to be the master strategist to write the plan for Trump of what he should do to win this election. All the headwinds are against Harris. They're not going in her direction. Inflation has come down, but people still believe costs are too high and they're not meeting wages. The world is less safe than it was in 2020. Even with, I mean, you could, and putting, COVID's kind of at least I look, when I mean safe, I mean in terms of, we're talking about two significant regional conflicts in Ukraine and Russia, as well as in the Middle East. The China-Taiwan issue is always something that's on the horizon of a concerning event. All these are bad for the incumbent. The economy has not grown at the pace that people wanted, and people blame too much spending, or they look at the significant investment packages. I'm going to make the case for Trump a little bit, that the significant investment packages, federal investment packages that Biden has done, the IRA, which was historic investment in bringing down prescription drug costs and investments in healthcare infrastructure, as well as tackling climate change and doing investments in renewable energy and other environmental friendly tactics. Unfortunately, that money has not gone out the door, right? So people see that angst. You're spending money and you're not even utilizing it to help the voter or help the communities. If you're Trump, if you've done all these great things, why isn't the economy doing better? If you've done all these great things, why come the voter isn't feeling it? So you look at all these issues, whether it's immigration, economy, the world's less safe, et cetera, you talk about all these things. Why haven't you done them in your past 3.5 years if you're so close to the president of the United States? The problem is the candidate. It's not the policies. If this is an election based on policies, I would think Trump has a really good chance to run away with this thing. Remember, Biden has yet to eclipse 45% since August of 2021, since he tried to withdraw from Afghanistan. It was not a successful campaign. But what is holding Trump back? Trump is holding himself back. And I think there, in just like it was in 2016, and even in 2020, where it was, voters were, the Trump voter, more in 16, didn't really want to raise her hand or shout out. They were, I mean, this is the independents I'm talking about, not the core, strong Trump base, but the independents or the moderates or even Democrats who voted in the past for Obama but didn't want to make the decision for Hillary. They were quiet on their vote. They were quiet on their support for Trump, and they didn't want to get in arguments at cocktail parties or get thrown out of dinner parties with their friends. They kept their decision making to themselves, and they went in their booth and they made the choice. I think this election is different. I think this election is actually the opposite, where it's vogue to be dissatisfied with where Biden Harris has gone. It's vogue to be we don't know this Kamala Harris, who she really is, who do we really support. I think it's, let's Trump really wasn't that bad. By the end of this campaign, when the significant fundraising advantage you're going to see, I mean, we really haven't seen the wall of advertising that you will see over the next 30 days, where Democrats have a 2-to-1 advantage. Voters will be reminded that actually, were we in better off than we were 4 years ago? The answer is going to be a hard no. They're going to remember what was happening during COVID when Trump was ignoring or dismissing how real of an issue this was and blaming other countries for the China flu. They're going to be reminded of January 6th, and it was just a flare up, and that Mike Pence did not do the right thing, and that's what caused this whole discussion. They're going to be reminded of trying to steal votes from other states. I think that will really have voters make a angst or an anxiety over what they should be doing when they get to the booth. I do not think they're going to pull that trigger. They're going to pull that lever for Trump. So that's what I think.
Yeah. Hey, look, the three of us, as we do, could go on for hours, but we don't need to. It's not the point of today. So I'm hitting stop.